Hi everyone. Today we are going to discuss about minimal access surgery. I request all of you to pay attention during this class because in this class you are going to hear more terms which are new to you. Coming to the definition of minimal access surgery, it is a product of modern technology and surgical innovation that aims to accomplish surgical therapeutic goals with minimal somatic and psychological trauma. See, minimal access surgery, that as the term indicates, that is, we are getting access into the abdomen by using the minimal incision. It is very small incisions we are using, and we are getting access to the abdomen to perform surgery. In this, we are using the modern technology and surgical innovation to achieve the goals with minimal, that is very less somatic and psychological trauma, that is very minimal pain. Coming to different types of minimal access surgery: laparoscopy, thoracoscopy, endoluminal endoscopy, perivisceral endoscopy, arthroscopy, and intra-articular joint surgery. This arthroscopy and intra-articular joint surgery, the orthopedicians will discuss about that. Coming to our topics, that is, one is laparoscopy, the other one is thoracoscopy. Thoracoscopy is getting access into the thorax with the help of this minimal incisions. The next one is endoluminal endoscopy, that is getting access into the stomach by means of endoscope. Example for this endoluminal endoscopy is POEM for eclasia cardia, that is per oral endoscopic myotomy, right? The other one is perivisceral endoscopic surgery. What is this perivisceral endoscopic surgery? In the areas where there is no space, for example, like retroperitoneum area, mediastinum, where there is no natural cavities, in such cases, we can create the space and perform surgeries, that is perivisceral endoscopy. The other example for this perivisceral endoscopy, apart from mediastinoscopy and retroperitoneoscopy, is SEPS, that is for varicose veins perforators, that is subfacial endoscopic perforator ligation surgery. So coming to minimal access surgery, different types of minimal access surgeries are laparoscopy, thoracoscopy, endoluminal endoscopy, example POEM for eclasia cardia, and perivisceral endoscopy. Examples are retroperitoneoscopy, mediastinoscopy, and SEPS for varicose veins, and the other one is arthroscopy and intra-articular joint surgery. See, now we are going to discuss about the main topic of the day, that is laparoscopic surgery. What is laparoscopic surgery? Laparoscopic surgery is also known as keyhole surgery. It's a type of surgery in which small incisions are made in the abdominal wall. See, these small incisions are such small that they are less than 1 centimeters, are made in the anti-abdominal wall, through which a laparoscope and other laparoscopic instruments can be placed to visualize and perform surgery. This laparoscopic surgery can be like two types. One is diagnostic laparoscopy and the other one is therapeutic laparoscopy. As you all know, therapeutic laparoscopy is providing treatment. Diagnostic laparoscopy is like for investigative purpose. Example for this diagnostic laparoscopy where you routinely use is in chronic abdominal pain. When you had when the patient, we advise many investigation and also we are not finding any cause for that chronic abdominal pain, then we will opt for diagnostic laparoscopy. So the role of laparoscopy, it can be used as an investigative purpose and also for treatment purpose. Investigative purpose, that is diagnostic laparoscopy for chronic abdominal pain, and therapeutic laparoscopy for treatment purpose. See, in this diagram, you will be able to appreciate these small incisions which are less than 1 centimeters. This incision, through which the instruments like laparoscope and the hand instruments like surgical instruments are passed and performing the surgery. This is the picture showing laparoscopic appendicectomy. Now, how does this laparoscopic surgery different from the conventional surgery? In the open surgery, see, in this diagram, this is the example of open appendicectomy where you can see the incision site, the McBurney's incision. Whereas coming to the laparoscopic surgery, these are the laparoscopic incisions. See how small the incisions are. Here the incision is around like 5 to 6 centimeters. Coming to here, it is less than 1 centimeters. Because of these small incisions, the patient will be having less pain and the patient can be mobilized earlier, and there will be less post-operative complications compared to the conventional surgery, in which the incision is very large, and because of this incisions there will be post-operative complications like wound infection, hernia, and also more pain, and patient will be immobilized for a long time compared to the laparoscopic surgery. Now, coming to the principles of minimal access surgery or laparoscopic surgery. What are the principles of laparoscopic surgery? Here you can use the mnemonic like VITROS, I VITROS, that is I stands for insufflate, V stands for visualize, I for insufflate, V for visualize, T for triangulation, R for retraction, O for operation, S for seal. Okay. See, in I VITROS, that is I for insufflate, V visualize, I again the I is for identify, T triangulate, R retract, O operate, S for seal. Okay, the laparoscopic surgery has to be performed under general anesthesia. Laparoscopic surgery has to be performed under general anesthesia. What are the contraindications for laparoscopic surgery? The patients who are unfit for general anesthesia are the contraindications for laparoscopic surgery. And regarding peritonitis, it is a relative contraindication. Coming to the core principles, now we are going to see what are the core principles in elaboration. The first principle is insufflate. Insufflate is like creation of pneumoperitoneum. Pneumoperitoneum creation, that is abdominal, making the abdomen distended by insufflating with the gas and the Veress needle. See, this is how we create the pneumoperitoneum using the Veress needle. This is the Veress needle which is used to create the pneumoperitoneum, and this is the insufflator. In the insufflator, you will be seeing various readings, 3 types of readings. And this is the insufflator. This tube is the gas tube which is connected to the Veress needle. What is the gas most commonly used for the creation of pneumoperitoneum? That is carbon dioxide is the most commonly used gas. Why carbon dioxide is commonly used? Because it is readily available, it is cheaper in cost, it suppresses the combustion, it is easily absorbed by tissues, and high diffusion coefficient. That is, it diffuses easily into the tissues, and it is quickly released via respiration. Because of all this, CO2 is commonly used for the creation of pneumoperitoneum in laparoscopy. Previously, there are the other gases like air, nitrous oxide, helium, argon are used, but at present we are using carbon dioxide only. Now, what is the intra-abdominal pressure you have to maintain during laparoscopy and why? See, during the laparoscopy, we usually maintain intra-abdominal pressure at 14 mm of mercury, not more than that. Why not more than that? Because if the intra-abdominal pressure is more than 14 mm of mercury, this will cause compression to the inferior vena cava. So the intra-abdominal pressure during laparoscopy should be maintained at the level of 14 mm of mercury. So this is regarding insufflate, that is insufflation, creation of pneumoperitoneum and Veress needle. The second principle is visualize. What do you visualize and how to visualize? Here, in case of visualization, you have to know about the terms like laparoscope, camera system, and light source. See, this is the laparoscope. I think many of you have seen in the OT theater, right? So this is the laparoscope. Here, you have to connect to the camera system. This is the camera system, camera head. This camera head has to be connected to the laparoscope, and this is the point where you will connect the light source. These laparoscopes are available in 10 mm size and also 5 mm size. These are of like 0 degree laparoscopes and 30 degree laparoscope. So to visualize, you have to have a laparoscope and the camera system. The camera system is connected to the laparoscope here, and at this point you will connect the light source or light cable. See, this is the light source. So you have to connect this light source to the laparoscope. So after connection, it will be like this. This is the laparoscope, 5 mm laparoscope, which is connected to the head of camera system. And here it is the light source, which is connected. Okay, this is about visualize. Once you connect, you made this laparoscope system, then you have to introduce it into the abdomen and perform diagnostic laparoscopy to see for any pathology in the liver, gallbladder, pelvic organs are to be visualized. That is diagnostic laparoscopy. For any procedure in laparoscopy, before starting the actual surgery, you have to do the diagnostic laparoscopy, right? And the other principle is identify. The first one is like insufflate, next visualize, next this the identify. What to identify? As soon as you place your laparoscope inside the abdomen, after creating pneumoperitoneum, you have to do diagnostic laparoscopy first. Next, you have to go for the target organs. What are the different target organs? It depends upon the surgery you are going to perform. If it is cholecystectomy, the target organ will be the gallbladder. If it is an appendicectomy, the target organ will be the appendix. Hysterectomy, it will be the uterus. So, after diagnostic laparoscopy, you have to identify the target organs. Next principle is triangulate. That is triangulation. What is meant by this triangulation? After identifying the target organ, you have to proceed further to do the surgery, for which you have to place other ports, that is port placement, and you have to place the other ports by using the triangulation principles and also following the ergonomic principles. Now, what is meant by this triangulation principle and what is meant by this ergonomic? See, in surgery, while performing the surgery, the surgeon should be very comfortable. For the surgeon to be comfortable, he has to follow the principles of ergonomic. What is this principles of ergonomics? That what should be the level of the table and how the hand should be abducted. All this will come under the ergonomics. And the other one is port placement. This has to be placed, the ports has to be placed on the basis of triangulation principle. See, these are the trocars. Trocars and ports are similar. Trocars, there are two types of trocars. One is disposable trocars and the other one is reusable trocars. These are reusable trocars which are made up of stainless steel. And there are also different sizes like 10 mm and 5 mm. This is the 5 mm trocar and this is the 10 mm trocars. This trocars has to be placed. After creating the pneumoperitoneum, you have to place the trocars. Additional ports through the trocars are placed depending upon the procedure to be done. If it is the cholecystectomy, the ports will be placed in different position. If it is laparoscopic appendicectomy, then the ports has to be placed in other position. These ports can be of like 5 mm or 10 mm ports. These ports are placed in such a way to form the proper triangulation of the instruments for dissection. It should be in the form of a triangle so that the dissection will be easy for the surgeon. If it is not in a proper triangulation, then it will cause hyperabduction at the shoulders and that will result to the fatigue to the operating surgeon. So while placing the ports, the surgeon has to follow the principles of triangulation and ergonomics. See, these are the different types of ports which are placed on the basis of triangulation principles. The other principle is retract. See, in laparoscopy, the surgeon has to be ambidextrous. That is, he or she has to use both the hands while performing the surgery, which is quite different from the normal conventional surgery, where in most of the time, for the assistance, the operating surgeon in open surgery will take the help of the assistant. Whereas in case of laparoscopy, his or her left hand should be used to retract. So for retraction, he has to manipulate local tissues so that will improve the access. So in case of laparoscopy, the surgeon should be ambidextrous for properly retraction and also for manipulating the tissues. See, this is the case of, this is a figure showing the laparoscopic cholecystectomy. Here the surgeon is using the both hands to retract. See, in this picture also you can see both the hands are used by the surgeon, that is ambidextrous. The other principle is operation, that is to operate. During the operation, you will use the terms like the techniques like the normal open surgery, that is incise, that is cutting with the help of laparoscopic scissors, suturing with the help of laparoscopic suturing, needle holder, anastomosis. You all be aware about the open staplers. Similarly, there will be staplers in laparoscopy also to do the bowel anastomosis. So in case of operation, the most of the techniques are like the open surgery only, incision, suturing, anastomosis. See, these are the different types of laparoscopic instruments you use while performing the surgery. These are the shaft and these are the ends, holder, ratchets, seam, Maryland. All these are the basis for this laparoscopic instruments are the open instruments only. Now, what are the common procedures do we see by using laparoscopy? That is laparoscopic cholecystectomy, laparoscopic appendicectomy, laparoscopic hernia repair. That is TAPP, TAP and TEP. All these procedures are done in our surgery department. The other advanced techniques in laparoscopic are like laparoscopic splenectomy, laparoscopic Nissen's fundoplication, laparoscopic colectomy, laparoscopic urological procedures, and laparoscopic pediatric surgeries procedures. All this can be done by laparoscopic. The others like nephrectomy, adrenalectomy, all can also be done by using the laparoscopic procedure. However, most commonly done are laparoscopic cholecystectomy, appendicectomy, and hernia repair. See, this is in our department, we performing the appendicectomy procedure by laparoscopy. And the other principle is seal, that is sealing and achieving hemostasis. The hemostatic measures like monopolar device, bipolar device, and harmonic device, all these are same as the open procedure. So to revise the core principles of laparoscopy, one is insufflate, that is creation of pneumoperitoneum and Veress needle. The other one is visualize with the help of laparoscope and camera system. The other one is like identify the target organs. Next, triangulation. Next, retraction. Next, operation. Next is the seal. These are the principles of laparoscopic surgery. Now, a note, one word about the procedures like nodes and sills. What is this nodes and sills? These are the advanced techniques in laparoscopy. Nodes is natural orifice transluminal endoscopic surgery, whereas sills is single incision laparoscopic surgery. See, nodes, natural orifice. What are the natural orifice? One will be the mouth, the other one is vagina in case of females. By using this natural orifice routes, transluminal endoscopic surgery. If you are performing the surgery, that is nodes. This is the advanced technique in laparoscopy, that is nodes, natural orifice transluminal endoscopic surgery, which can be done via oral cavity, mouth or vagina. The other one is sills, that is single incision laparoscopic surgery. In case of normal conventional laparoscopic surgery, you will create 3 or 4 ports depending upon surgery. But whereas in case of sills or single incision laparoscopic surgery, you will use only one incision, that is nearly around the umbilical, that is one incision only. Through that port, through that omniport, you will pass all the instruments. This is single incision laparoscopic surgery. Commonly, cholecystectomy can be done by using sills procedure. What are the advantages of laparoscopy? By this time, you might have known like laparoscopy will cause decrease in pain, hospital stay, and as the wound size is less, decrease in wound size, the trauma will be less and there will be less heat loss. Improved visualization. We can see very clearly in laparoscopy on the monitor, and improved mobility. As soon as the surgery is completed, we can ask the patient, we can mobilize the patient. There will be reduction in wound infection as the scar is very less, and there will be reduction in dehiscence, bleeding, hernias, and nerve entrapment. These are all the advantages of laparoscopy, that is decrease in pain, hospital stay, decrease in wound size, trauma, heat loss decrease, and improved visualization, improved mobility, and reduction in wound infection, dehiscence, herniation, bleeding, and nerve entrapment. Now, what are the disadvantages of laparoscopy? One is cost. The other one is like reliance on the remote vision and operating. See, we are depending upon the vision on the monitor. We are not directly seeing the organ. So it is, we are depending on the remote vision and we are operating. And there is no loss of tactile feedback. We are not touching the organ. So there will be no tactile feedback. Another one is dependence on hand-eye coordination. Both your eyes and hands should be coordinated and they have to be worked in together. And difficulty with hemostasis. As soon as any vessel is bleeding, it is very difficult to see because the blood will obscure the field and it will be difficult to visualize and to operate. And also the disadvantage while extracting the large specimens, it will be a bit difficult to extract large specimens via small incisions. Okay, the disadvantages of laparoscopy are again reliance on remote vision and operating, loss of tactile feedback, dependence on hand-eye coordination, difficulty with hemostasis, and extraction of large specimens. Now, what are the complications of laparoscopy? The complications of laparoscopy are more or less similar like the open surgery, because in case of open surgery also there will be anesthesia related complications like cardiac issues, and the complications specific to laparoscopy are pneumoperitoneum related complications and ports placement complications. Pneumoperitoneum, while creating the pneumoperitoneum, if the intra-abdominal pressure is more than 14 mm, it will cause vena cava compression and it also stimulate the vagus causing the bradycardia. And while placing the ports, you should be very careful, otherwise you will injure the viscera underlying the organs like small bowel also be injured, and also vascular injuries like major vascular injuries like aortal injuries can also occur. Other complications are surgery related, they are individual surgery specific, and the energy sources like monopolar, bipolar energy sources related. So complications of laparoscopy are anesthesia related complications, pneumoperitoneum related, ports placement. This pneumoperitoneum and ports placement are specific for laparoscopic surgery. You will not see in open surgery. The other surgery related and energy sources related are common for the open surgery also. So this is about the laparoscopic surgery. Laparoscopic surgery is a type of minimal access surgery, also known as keyhole surgery. And the principles of laparoscopic surgery are I vitros. And coming to the advantages of laparoscopy, that is decreased pain and improved mobility, decreased hospital stay. Disadvantages are difficulty while bleeding, controlling the bleeding and extraction of large specimens, and the complications like pneumoperitoneum related and port placement. Next, we can go to the other topic of the day, that is robotic surgery. This is one of the advanced surgery, that is robotic surgery. See, robotic surgery is a method to perform surgery using very small tools attached to the robotic arm. See, in case of robotic surgery, here the robot will be having robotic arms. Using these robotic arms, we can perform the surgery. The surgeon controls the robotic arms with the computer. The principle under the robotic surgery is master-slave system. You know what is meant by slave? That is servant. In this robotic surgery, the slave is the robot. Robot has to obey the orders of the master. The master is the surgeon. The operating surgeon is the master and the robot is the slave. So the underlying principle in the robotic surgery is the master-slave system. Surgeon is the master and robot is the slave. The two are linked by the underlying hardware. The two means the surgeon and the robot are linked by the underlying hardware and software components within an advanced computer construction. Okay, this is the robotic equipment. See here the surgeon is operating. This we call like the console. Where the surgeon sits we call the console, and these are the robotic arms. Don't expect that the robot will be like, as you see in some of the films, the robot will not be like an seeing in a human being form. It will be with like this, with robotic arms. Okay, this robotic arms will perform the surgery, and according to how the surgeon moves here the instruments, the robot will move the instruments here. So the surgeon sitting in the console, and this is the robotic arms, assistant for the surgeon, and this is the monitor. Now, what are the applications of robotic surgery? That is remote surgery, also known as telesurgery, minimal invasive surgery, unmanned surgery. Applications of robotic surgery are unmanned surgery, where the surgery can be done without the help of human beings. That is unmanned surgery. The other one is minimally invasive surgery. The same principles of laparoscopic surgery holds even in the robotic surgery. The other application is remote surgery or telesurgery. Nowadays, we are hearing a lot of terms like telemedicine, teleconsultation. Similarly, there is a term like telesurgery, that is performing the surgery at the distant level, that is remote surgery. This telesurgery is possible with the help of robot. That is, robotic surgery has application in the remote surgery, telesurgery. See, the first robotic telesurgery was conducted in India, where the cardiologist Dr. Tejesh Patel has conducted the cardiologic procedure. This happened in Gujarat in 2019. Okay, so the applications for robotic surgery is telesurgery. That is, with the help of robot we can do the surgeries at the distance. In this surgery, they perform the surgery at the distance of 32 kilometers. Now, coming to the components of robotic surgery, that is patient cart, console, surgical cart. See, this is the patient cart. These are the robotic arms. Some robot will have 6 arms, whereas some robot will have 8 arms. So this is the robotic patient cart, and this is the surgical console. That is where the surgeon, operating surgeon will sit. That is the console. The other one is the vision cart. The monitor is the vision cart. So these are the components of the robotic surgery. Now, what are the advantages of robotic surgery? Robotic surgery, the advantages are twofold. That is, one for the patient. For the patient, the advantages are same like the laparoscopic surgery. In addition to the laparoscopic advantages, the advantages of robotic surgery, that is, it is advantage for the surgeon also. What are the advantages for the surgeon? That is better visualization. It is 3D view, so stereoscopic views and higher magnification. Better visualization compared to the open and laparoscopic. The visualization in the robotic surgery is more, and similarly there will be elimination of hand tremor. I think many of you have seen that some of the surgeons, while performing the surgery, they will be having some hand tremors. This can be eliminated in the robotic surgery, because in case of robotic surgery, the main surgery is performed by the robot with the guidance of the operating surgeon, and the surgeon will be in the stress-free environment. He will be sitting comfortably in the console and performing the surgery, and so there will be, he can pay more attention and more concentration. So these are the advantages of robotic surgery for the surgeon. So in the advantages of robotic surgery, the advantages are for patient as well as for the surgeon. For the patient, the advantages are same like laparoscopic surgery, whereas for the surgeon, it is better visualization, elimination of hand tremor, stress-free environment, and higher levels of concentration. Coming to the disadvantages. As with any modern technology, the first disadvantages will be like expensive. It is more costly. The other one is limited availability. It is not available at all places. And cumbersome equipment. See, the equipment is like huge console, patient cart, vision cart, that is cumbersome equipment. And the learning curve, this is the steep learning curve for the robotic surgeries. These are the disadvantages of robotic surgery. So regarding the robotic surgery, the principle is master slave system. Here the master is the operating surgeon and slave is the robot. And components of robotic surgery are console, vision cart and patient cart. And the applications of robotic surgery are remote surgery, that is telesurgery, unmanned surgery and minimally invasive surgery. And the advantages both for the patient and for the surgeon, and disadvantages like limited availability, expensive. Next, we will go for the next topic of the today, that is bariatric surgery and obesity. What is this bariatric surgery? Bariatric surgery is surgery done on the obese patients to decrease the obesity. Okay, obesity and bariatric surgery. What is obesity? Obesity is abnormal or excessive fat accumulation that presents a risk to the health. Obesity, the definition is abnormal or excessive fat accumulation that presents a risk to the health. How do you measure the obesity? The most common way to measure the obesity is body mass index. Body mass index is patient's weight in kilograms divided by meters, height in meters, square of height in meters. Body mass index, a person's weight, that is in kilograms divided by the square of his or her height in meters. So this is the body mass index. If the body mass index is less than 18.5, then you categorize it as underweight. If it is between 18.5 and 24.5, this is normal. So the normal body mass index is between 18.5 to 24.5. If it is more than 25 and less than 30, that is overweight. 25 to 30 kg per meter square body mass index is overweight. Now coming to the obesity, there are different terms like severe obesity, moderate obesity, super obesity. If the body mass index is more than 35 kg per meter square, then it is severe obesity. If the body mass index is more than 40, then it is morbid obesity. If the body mass index is more than 45 kg per meter square, then it is super obesity. If it is more than 50, that is super obesity. As the 10 increases, you have to add one super. So the ideal body mass index is 18.5 to 24.5 kg per meter square. Morbid obesity when the body mass index is more than 40 kg per meter square. Super obesity when the body mass index is more than 45 to 50. Okay, what are the causes of obesity? It depends on genetics, some like behavior and environmental. So these are the causes of obesity: behavior changes, environmental changes and genetical conditions. Okay, what are the complications, obesity related complications, and what is metabolic syndrome? Metabolic syndrome, it is a cluster of conditions. It is conditions of 5, that is cluster of 5 conditions that occur together. They occur together, increasing the risk of heart disease, stroke and type 2 diabetes. Metabolic syndrome is a cluster of conditions, that's a group of conditions, 5 conditions that occur together, increasing the risk of heart disease, stroke and type 2 diabetes. What are the conditions? What is that cluster? What are the 5 conditions of metabolic syndrome? One is increased blood pressure. The other one is high blood sugar levels, that is insulin resistance, excess fat around the waist, and high, that is obesity, high triglyceride levels, low levels of good cholesterol or HDL. These 5 are the components of metabolic syndrome, that is increased blood pressure, high blood sugar levels, excess fat around the waist, high triglyceride levels, low levels of good cholesterol or HDL. Anyway, all this will be discussed more detail in your medicine classes. So coming to the other complications of this obesity are, one is metabolic syndrome is the complication of obesity. The other one are heart diseases, hypertension, osteoarthritis and also spine problems. The other diseases like reproductive, fertility, obesity also affects the fertility, like polycystic kidney, polycystic ovarian disease in case of females, and also infertility and cancer. It is an obesity is like a pre-cancerous condition. So it has obesity has risk for the cancer, many cancers also. Obstructive sleep apnea, hyperlipidemia, type 2 diabetes. So these are the complications of the obesity. Now, how do you treat this obesity? What are the treatment options for obesity? One is lifestyle modifications, drugs, surgery. Lifestyle modifications like to avoid the sedentary lifestyle and exercise and also diet control. All this will come under lifestyle modifications. I think you might have learned about this in your SPM classes. The other one is like drugs. What are the anti-obesity drugs? And thus coming to surgery, the surgery is bariatric surgery. So the surgery for obesity is bariatric surgery. It is also known as metabolic surgery. Anti-obesity drugs like orlistat, that is lipase inhibitors, lorcaserin, phentermine, topiramate, naltrexone, bupivacaine, and liraglutide. All this will be discussed in your medicine class. Coming to the surgery, now when to perform the surgery, that is when to perform bariatric surgery or metabolic surgery to the patients, obesity patients. Not that all the patients who are obese, you should not go, you should not advise them to go for surgery. You have to advise surgery for those people whose body mass index is more than 40 kg per meter square. That is more than 40 kg per meter square is morbid obesity. Or if the body mass index is more than 35 kg per meter square, and if the patient is having any medical complications like diabetes, hypertension, thyroid problems, cardiac issues, in such conditions you can advise surgery. Or if there are failure for other approaches to long-term weight loss, in these conditions you can advise surgery, that is bariatric surgery or metabolic surgery to the patient. Now, what are the different types of bariatric surgeries? The different types of bariatric surgeries are restrictive type, malabsorptive type, and mixed type. What is restrictive surgery? Example for restrictive bariatric surgery is sleeve gastrectomy. That is cutting a portion of the stomach. See, this is the normal stomach. If you cut this part of the stomach, that is along the greater curvature, if you cut this part and if you remove this part, then it is sleeve gastrectomy. You are removing a part of the stomach. That is sleeve gastrectomy. By removing a part of the stomach, you are restricting or you are decreasing the size of the stomach. That is the example for bariatric surgery, restrictive type, sleeve gastrectomy. The other one is malabsorptive surgery, that is biliopancreatic diversion. Just know about the terms like biliopancreatic diversion is an example of malabsorptive bariatric surgery. The mixed type is Roux-en-Y gastric bypass. See, this you are creating a bypass. You are bypassing a part of the stomach. This is the small stomach pouch. From here, the food will enter here. So you are bypassing this large part. This type of surgery, that is Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, is an example for mixed type. Mixed means both restrictive part, small size, and also malabsorptive type. That is Roux-en-Y gastric bypass. This is about bariatric surgery. Bariatric surgery is the surgery done on obese patients, and when to perform the bariatric surgery if they are morbid obesity, that is BMI more than 40 kg per meter square or BMI more than 35 kg per meter square with some underlying comorbidities. In such cases, you have to perform bariatric surgery, and also in conditions where the lifestyle modifications and drugs failed. And different types of surgeries are restrictive type, malabsorptive type, and mixed type, of which the restrictive sleeve gastrectomy is the important one. Routinely and commonly performed surgery for the bariatric surgery is the sleeve gastrectomy. And a word about ERAS, that is enhanced recovery after surgery. ERAS means enhanced recovery after surgery. See, the advantage of laparoscopic surgery or robotic surgery is to mobilize the patient as early as possible. So, enhanced recovery after surgery. How do you enhance the recovery of the patient after surgery? To enhance or to improve the recovery after the surgery, you have to follow certain principles preoperatively, intraoperatively, postoperatively. By following all these principles, you can enhance the recovery or improve the recovery of the patient after the surgery. Preoperatively, the principles you have to follow for ERAS, that is enhanced recovery after surgeries, pre-admission education. You have to educate them, early discharge planning, reduce fasting duration, carbohydrate loading, and venous thromboprophylaxis, antibiotic prophylaxis, pre-warming. All this you have to follow pre-operatively. You have to educate the patient regarding the surgery, and after the surgery how to ambulate, and you have to plan for early discharge, and also thromboprophylaxis, antibiotic prophylaxis, and no bowel preparation. All this you have to follow pre-operatively to enhance the recovery of the patient after surgery. Similarly, during intraoperatively active warming, you have to cover the patient with blankets and AC temperature monitoring, everything. And opioid sparing techniques. Anesthesia, during the anesthesia, you should not give opioids. Also surgical techniques. The surgeon should be fast and should be fine. And also avoidance of prophylactic NG tubes and drains. All this should be intraoperatively you have to follow. Similarly, in the postoperative, early oral nutrition, early ambulation, early catheter removal, and defined discharge criteria. All this has to be followed post-operatively. Pain and nausea management and perioperative fluid management all should be done so that the patient, there will be enhanced or improved recovery after surgery. This is about ERAS, that is enhanced recovery after surgery. So this comes to the end of today's session. Today we had discussed about laparoscopic surgery, robotic surgery, bariatric surgery, and ERAS. See how days are changing, that from the classroom teaching to the now we are teaching it in the online. Similarly, in case of surgery also, from open surgery, next laparoscopic surgery, next robotic surgery, in future there will be other advancements. So you have to upgrade yourself. I think many of you had seen this one in the social media. So the only conclusion for today is that upgrade yourself. Thank you. Any doubts you can ask. So before doubts, I want to ask you one question, that in the last exam, one of your multiple choice question is like, what is the most common congenital anomaly of GI tract? What is the most common congenital anomaly of the GI tract, of which many of you had written it as duodenal atresia? One thing I didn't understand that is that we didn't discuss anything about duodenal atresia. How can you write the topic which we didn't discuss? So the answer for the most common congenital anomaly of GI tract is Meckel's diverticulum. That is 2%, rule of 2 for the Meckel's diverticulum. So any doubts? If there are no doubts, we can close today's session. Okay then. Thank you.